So again, I think I've met everybody now, which is fantastic. Just to remind you, my name's Brendan. Thank you very much for coming along to Business Made Better, BMB. Myself and Stephen at the back, who you met at the door, he's the money man, just keeps rolling in. We decided to set something like this up because we really saw a drastic need for something different on the coast in regards to networking. We both attended different functions. I'm sure all you guys have attended various functions, and again, I keep saying to people, I'm not here to knock any of those other networking events or anything like that. It just doesn't necessarily work for me. And what doesn't really work for me is the idea of whenever I go into a room, I just felt like people were out to get me. They wanted something from me all the time. And that was generally like they wanted me to buy their something or to do business with them. And again, it's not a bad thing. We all are around to, we have a business or we work for someone and we need to live and we need money to live. But what made me uncomfortable was I didn't know those people. I didn't have a relationship with them. I didn't know them. If I didn't know them, I didn't know if I was going to like them. And if I didn't like them, how can I trust them? So going through that process was really, really important for me. And again, it's not that's very much a time-based scenario. It's about, some people take a little while to build a relationship and to build that trust, and other people just give you the trust and they wait for you to break it, and hopefully you don't. So whereas the traditional networking environments that I'd been to before were very transactional based. I sort of care about you, but only care if you're going to do some business with me or something like that. So we've been really, really fortunate. Last year we ran 11 of these events, Business Made Better, and we had fantastic speakers through those 11 events. And a number of people, some here tonight, some not here, but they did develop some good business out of those meetings and connecting with people here. But it wasn't the purpose of the room. The purpose of the room was to connect with people, get some value out of some really good speakers that we have and that we want to keep bringing to the coast, make some connections. Personally, I really like that feel of, I'm not sure, does anyone follow a football team, soccer team, rugby league team, something like that? A netball team maybe? I love that feel. I follow Liverpool. Who do you follow, Joey? You don't. Okay. Barnstonworth. Okay. So following a football team, and I know when I meet people, and you're sort of trying to see where common interests lie and stuff, and inevitably being blokes, sport comes up or something like that. So, and when you're speaking with you find out you're speaking with a fellow Liverpool supporter, you feel like you've got that connection already, and it's almost like there's an element of trust there already, which is absolutely fantastic. If I'm speaking to a Tottenham supporter, that's a whole different story. Okay, and that's, for me, that's the sort of feel I want to create. And I know Stephen, working alongside us, we want to create it for a room like this. So it's about providing value to you guys each month through good speakers, through good connections, and growing that community, so that we can actually be known on the coast as a fantastic, networking and relationship building group, which actually just happens because, hey, you're in the BMB group as well. You know what? We should connect and maybe we can do some business. That's where we want to get to. Okay, and I'm not going to talk tonight so much about the Go-Giver, but if anybody, this community again was built a lot on the premise of the Go-Giver, and I'll certainly share some information on that. This is who I like to call Mr. Go-Giver. Doesn't refer to his business that way, but Ian's again, you guys haven't come here really to listen to me, you've come to listen to Ian, so I better pass across to him pretty soon. Ian's a chap I met a couple of years back now, and he was a guy that I just had to meet. I found Ian on LinkedIn, and I found a mutual connection of mine who I knew really, really well and was connected with Ian. And when I spoke to this chap, he knew Ian really, really well also. So that was my sort of inroad to say, hey, can you create a warm introduction for me to Ian, which he did. And I think we've got on pretty well ever since.
I'm glad he did.
Me too. It's like a great love story, isn't it? And his beautiful wife's over there as well, Anne, who's made the trip up. So behind every great man, there's an even better woman. Is that not right? So again, thank you all for coming up. I appreciate that. So Ian, we had to, a nice little coffee in a dodgy cafe down in Chatswood Way, and again, just his philosophies, and whether he knows it or not, but I've really used Ian, maybe not a nice word, but he's really provided some mentorship for me over the time, and we're not talking every week or anything like that, but we talk about various things. We catch up for a coffee from time to time, and he's a very experienced guy in business, and to the point where we're really looking for fantastic people to join our board at the International Football and Tennis School, which is my day job. And we asked Ian to come along. He had the skill set we needed, and he kindly accepted, thankfully. And he offers huge value to our board at the International Football School. I know through mutual connections on LinkedIn that he offers huge value to many, many people around the world. In his past life, he was the Global Sales and Marketing Director for Deloitte. And if you haven't heard of Deloitte, then you probably should have. So now he runs his own business called Eccoh. And I can guess he can tell you a little bit more about that. But tonight he's going to be talking to us about unlocking the power of purpose. So I'll hand you over to Ian. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brendan. Do you want to work the magic on do you want to do your microphone thing?
Yeah, we'll start.
I've got 2 microphones on.
That's the importance of what you've got to say, mate.
There we go.
You're good.
I just chopped that in my pocket. There we go. Fantastic. Okay. I've always been a fairly resilient kind of guy from back in the day when I was a young chap. I was born in Yorkshire. If you guys have heard of Sheffield, some of you might have heard of Geoffrey Boycott, the cricketer. I should talk like him. But we're from the same place. But I remember when I was starting out in business, thinking that the Sheffield accent wasn't conducive to professional business relationships, and I needed to change the way I spoke so that I could be the professional that I thought I needed to be. And that didn't sound like Jeff Boycott, it sounded like somebody else. So every time I met someone whose accent I liked, I kind of picked up on the way they spoke. And over time, I've developed this kind of generic kind of accent. But thinking way back when I was a little guy, coming from the mean streets of Sheffield, we didn't have much. We didn't have much of anything really. And I think when you're born into not poverty, but a simple sort of working class life, single mom, lived in a council estate in the Steel City. We didn't really have anything, and I suppose there are 2 ways you can go when you're in that environment. You can sort of wallow in the inequities. You can feel sorry about the stuff you haven't got, or you can start working with what you have got. And I kind of went that way, and I've always been able to sort of see the silver lining, always make the best of any situation. And thinking about purpose, my earliest recollection of having an experience that could be likened to feeling and experiencing purpose was when I needed to do something that required some money and didn't have any money. I was only maybe, 10 or 12 or something at the time. I can't remember exactly the age, but maybe it was to go to the disco. I don't know what back then we used to have discos. But it was to do something. I had no money and no way of getting any money. And I thought, well, what can I do? What can I do to try and generate some money so I could go do this thing? And the only thing I had access to at the time was my mother's bucket and the sponge that she used to clean the windows. So I thought what I'd do is take the bucket and the sponge and I'd go around the council estate, knocking on people's doors, asking the house owners if they wanted their car washed. So that's what I did. In fact, I've got a selfie of me back in the day, being very, 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 very happy about my car washer. I used to dip my head in but I used to walk around the estate, and I'd knock on people's doors, and I'd say, "Hey, Mister, do you want your car washed?" And they'd say, "Well, how much?" And I'd say, 50p. 50 pence. To me, when you've got nothing, 50p is a lot of money, right? just to qualify, 50p is a lot of money, but back then, to get from where I lived to school was a fair walk. The bus ride to get to school was 2p. It was 2 pence to go on the bus. I couldn't afford the 2p. We didn't have 2p for the bus ride, so you used to have to walk. So 50p, when you can't afford 2p, is a lot of money, right? So I'd knock on people's doors and I'd say, hey, do you want your car washed? How much? 50p. And they'd think, wow, 50p, wow, the guy's going to wash my car, fantastic, saves me a job. And they'd say, yeah, right? So I'd get about washing the car with my washing up liquid in the bucket and the sponge, and I'd get busy. But here's the thing, what I learned from this, if my motivation was to wash as many cars in the day and make as much money as I could from washing as many cars as I could, I'd just whip over that thing as quickly as possible, get the 50p and knock on someone else's door. But here's the thing, now I think back, I actually spent a lot of time washing that car. I'd get into all the nooks and crannies, I'd spend a lot of time making sure all the edges were clean and all the underbits were clean and everything. And when the people would come out, they would, I think, be surprised at the amount of work that was gone in, because it wasn't a bodge job they were expecting for their 50p. And this is the amazing thing that came back to me at that point was they wouldn't pay me 50p. They'd pay me £1, or they'd pay me £2, or £2.50, you know? And this amazed me, right? Because I wasn't expecting that. 50p was a lot for me. So when someone gives you £1 or £2, it's just unbelievable, right? So now I think back, that experience that I had gave me a sense of what we might call today a feeling of purpose, that I had an impact. I did something that somebody else was appreciative of, even though I didn't do it with the intention of getting something back other than the 50p, right? I went above and beyond, which is, I suppose, very much go-giver land. But since that day, I took a few wrong turns in my career. You know, I went on from being that young lad walking around the estate, wanting to clean people's cars. I developed a career in sales. I never had a problem speaking with people and knocking on doors and trying to find new business. And being this guy that always made the best out of things and always saw the silver lining, I never really thought so much about this purpose thing. You know, because I always, whatever situation I was in, even if I was in a toxic culture in some organizations, and now I think back I was. But at the time, because I'm so resilient and so ready to make the best of it, I was able to put a silver lining on that situation. It wasn't until maybe about, how long ago? 10 years or so ago now, that I found this book that Brendan mentioned, the Go-Giver book. And who's read The Go-Giver? Yeah, a few of you might have read The Go-Giver. If you haven't read it, I would sincerely recommend you getting a copy of The Go-Giver and reading the Go-Giver book. And the follow-on book is Go-Giver's Sell More. Now, I've been in sales a long, long time. I thought I knew everything about sales. I thought I was doing sales the right way. I was the Yoda of selling, as far as I was concerned. But when I read those books, everything changed. I realized actually my purpose was completely misplaced. I had it all wrong. So what we're going to do today is do a little bit of a walkthrough of what is this thing called purpose. It's really come to be a trendy word these days, right? Everyone's talking about purpose. You know, purpose is what drives us. But what is it really? You know, I think a lot of people are talking about it, but not a lot of people know what it is and how they can actually embrace it in the day-to-day. So let's have a talk about that. Before we get there, though, I'd like you to just have a read of that statement. Have a read of that statement and let me just get your thoughts on that statement. I mean, some of you might have heard that statement before from Steve Jobs. Do you agree with that statement? Yeah? Do you agree with that statement? Most people do, right? It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. But let me ask you, if you think about the people that you work with, the people in your companies, the people that you know maybe work for somebody else, the people that you encounter in other businesses on a day-to-day that you buy things from, maybe suppliers, maybe partners. Give me your thoughts on how true this statement is for those people. How much of a person's passion, talent, capability, are they able to, or do they bring to what they do every day? Think about that. How much of it, and I want you to think about it in percentage terms. How much of their raw talent, their capabilities, their passion, do they get to bring to work with them every day? I want you to think about a number in your mind. Think about a number, a percentage in your mind. Now, I want you to raise your hand if that number you had in your head is more than 10%. More than 10%. So more than 10% of, yeah? How about more than, keep it up. Keep it up. Is it, how about more than 20%? How about more than 30%? 40%? More than 50%? More than 60%? More than 70%? About 70%? See, most of the hands in the room went down around the 50, kind of 40%. You know, think about that for a moment. That's a pretty scary thing, isn't it? I mean, if you had a car, that you'd spend a lot of money on, and it only gave you what you wanted, it only gave you the performance you were looking for 40 to 50% of the time, you wouldn't be very happy, right? But yet, in work, people are the largest expense for pretty much every business. But yet, we seem to be in this environment where we've accepted that it's just not working. And we all know it's not working. It's not working for us. And for the longest time, it wasn't working for me. I was in the corporate machine for a hell of a long time. We can see in the people we work with, the people we know, it's not working for them. I think, although this statement is true, this is where we should be aiming. I think this is probably more like the reality. I mean, great, if you're a champion kayaker and being in white water is your thing, then fantastic. But for most of us, this is not where we want to be, right? Gasping for air every day, just trying to stay afloat, isn't the kind of work environment that allows you to bring your passion to what you do every day. But this is where most of us find ourselves, especially in the big end of town. As Brendan mentioned, I worked for Deloitte for a long time. It's an organization that employs almost 200,000 people internationally. I mean, terrifically low engagement. In fact, who would hazard a guess what the global level of engagement is? The percentage of people that are engaged in their work globally at the moment. Would you have a guess at the figure? Throw some percentage. 25%? 20%? Less than 18? Anyone else? Would you be surprised to know 13%? 13% of the global workforce is engaged in what they do. 13%. The Gallup organization has been measuring this stuff for decades. You know, for the past 30 years, that number has pretty much not moved. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? We've been measuring this stuff and trying to work to make workplaces more engaging, but it hasn't changed in like 30 plus years. 13% of the workforce is engaged at work. I mean, ridiculous. There's also another study that I read recently by a company called Aon Hewitt. Anyone heard of Aon Hewitt? Again, another major organization, similar to Gallup, that measures this stuff. But this time their research was measuring workplace trust. Workplace trust. And they found that workplace trust was not surprisingly at an all-time low. So we've got profound disengagement at work, combined with this lack of trust between people. And to get things done, we need people to work together, right? We need collaboration. We need teamwork. But how equipped do you think the people who are at the same jobs together, in the same places together, how equipped, how capable are they of doing that if they don't like the job they're doing and they don't trust the people that they're working with? It's crazy, right? It's great. I mean, some of us are in that situation ourselves. If we split the room, chances are some of us are in that situation. I know I was for the longest time. Who's heard of this term VUCA? We live in a VUCA world. Have you heard of that term? V-U-C-A. I mean, as if it wasn't already bad enough, I'm going to make it even worse. VUCA. We live in a VUCA world. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's a term that started in the US military a while back to describe the new environment that the military faced in the changing nature of modern warfare. Yeah, it used to be that there were two armies, right? They'd meet on a field and they'd sort of march towards each other and start shooting or beating each other and stuff like that. But that all changed, right? The nature of war, the nature of the world with terrorism, cyber terrorism, all sorts of things began to change. And that meant the military had to change their model of operation. What was the model of operation that used to drive the military process? It was sorry? The command hierarchy. Can you imagine? I mean, back in the day, that was probably appropriate, right? Like the grunts on the front line were told to go march and take a hill and shoot those bad guys, or do this or do that, by the upper class people drinking tea and having cucumber sandwiches back at base, right? And they got blown to smithereens, and then they're wheeling some more, right? But can you imagine that happening today in the dealing with the threats that we face today? You know, something happens, there's some sort of terrorist event happening down here, and they go, oh, we better go back to the command bunker and find out what we should be able to do about this. And by the time they go back to do something about it, everyone's been blown to smithereens, right? The terrorists have gone, there's nothing happening. So what they had to do was to find a new way. They had to change the model of operation. They had to have people on the front line that could make decisions in the moment. They didn't need grunts on the ground anymore. They needed people who had the right types of ethics, the right types of principles, the right types of intelligence to make decisions on the ground and act in the moment. But that term, that VUCA world, that VUCA term also became part of the corporate culture, because there are so many issues in the corporate world that have also made it so very much volatile and uncertain and complex and ambiguous for the way companies operate today. What might some of those be? Can you think of some of those? What are some of those volatility issues that we see in the marketplace today that make business much more challenging?
Well, just the changing nature of the way customers are consuming things, the volatility for anyone in business or any product or service that is selling.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially with when we've got the big Amazon coming out soon, huh? I mean, that's a great example of how things are changing dramatically.
You've got manufacturing centres, you've got in terms of the different locations that people are manufacturing different goods in, and the changing currency rate and the quality of issues. And then you've got social media, you've got war, religion, and they all impact.
I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, there are so many, right? Yeah. There are so many things. They used to call them black swans, right? You know that term, black swans? You know, the things that would never happen, but we had to plan for a black swan event. It seems that every day is a black swan event, right? I mean, Trump is president. Really? Goodness, that's a black swan event, isn't it? But, you know, there are so many different things that are happening now, but every day there seems to be a headline when no one expected that to happen, and it's happening. And business has to sort of respond to that, yeah?
Because probably business is more global these days. And it's impacted on a global scale, and whereas that's such a fast pace of change.
Yeah.
In that sense, and we're all exposed to it in some way.
Yeah.
What about the market expectation of short cycles? Is that up there?
Talk to me some more.
So the expectation to deliver to the market on very short cycles.
Oh, yes, yes.
And so it just drives short-term.
Short-term.
Short-term strategy.
Yeah.
Crank it just to get through the next quarter.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because it drives the share price and the cycles, yeah, and
And
up
you
and...
start the next quarter on a back foot.
Yes. Absolutely, it is, yeah. I mean, there are elements in the system itself that are forcing the wrong types of behaviors, right? Yeah, so it's kind of, this volatility is kind of built in. It's self-imposed, yeah? And we're a bit of slaves to it. So this is the environment we face. Massive disengagement with people, low trust, stuff happening every day that's causing us to be fearful of just walking around, in the streets. We're looking over our shoulder in case there's a car coming up the shopping alley, right? I mean, there's so many things that people are worried about in work, outside of work, and it all has an effect on what we're doing, especially in the workplace. Let's have a look at what impact that has. What do you think? I want you to think about this statement for a moment. People will assign an intent to you whether you want them to or not. True or false? Do you think that's true? Anyone think false? Most people agree with that. I mean, it's human nature, right? Human nature. Let's just take that a little bit further. The intent they assign to you will have a significant impact on the way they're prepared to interact with you. Agree with that as well? How might their intent or their judgment of your intent, more to the point, how might that impact the way they're prepared to interact with you? Based on everything we talked about, the context of the environment we're in, and people are making a judgment call about your intent. How might that drive how they're prepared to interact with you?
Well, like in a sales environment, if the customer were to see that your intent is about the value that you're getting from this engagement, and I'm here to make money, and I'm not actually here to help your business, then they'll see that intent as being your benefit, not my benefit.
Yeah.
Why you're here, so they probably won't do business with you.
And that'll cause them to back away. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. What else might that do? What else might, depending?
I don't think it's just business. I think it's just
People, yeah.
people in general. It could be family, it could be friends, and the intent is there.
Yeah.
Trust also just disappears.
Yeah. What people automatically distrust you? Yeah. People automatically question your motives. And is that understandable given everything we talked about, the environment? People are at work every day working with people they don't trust. Are they able to turn off that lack of trust in the workplace when they leave work and then come and then all of a sudden they're nice and trusting with everybody else?
But I do believe that it's a culture that's created within, if you're talking in the workplace, it is created.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't come to work to get paid to be in that environment. It is built and created.
True. Yeah. I understand. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into that just shortly. So hold that point. Hold that point.
Ian, what I found in my own experience, when I was a consultant in the business improvement world and working for myself and still having that intent personally of wanting to help people, but I needed to live as well. But my single intent was to help, and I knew that if I provide enough value, then I would create some money from generate some money for that. And I was connecting with a lot of people on LinkedIn through that process. Even before I was a consultant, I did that. But what I found drastically before having a full-time job, connecting with people on LinkedIn, and then being a consultant, and no disrespect to consultants at all, but being a consultant, connecting with people, and now having a full-time job again and not being a consultant, very different around the interaction that I get on LinkedIn when I wasn't a consultant. And I think that comes around the intent and that culture around maybe some consultants that have maybe not created a nice place. It's like changing the way the world thinks about sales. People can sometimes not look at sales favourably because there's that stigma around
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's what I found very interesting personally around that. I found that consultancy it actually created a barrier for building relationships to some extent.
Okay. Mm.
I think it's
And I think a lot of it comes down to that.
Yeah.
There's that, your intent is really to do business, make money from me.
Mm.
Very interesting.
So you,
I was just going to say, I get hit all the time for different proposals from marketing organisations to legal firms to a number of different things in the world we live in, and I very quickly assess who they are, and I'm probably as much to blame. I would tailor the way I interact with those people and pigeonhole those people very, very quickly, because I haven't got enough time in the day to be doing that sort of thing. And if I have, then there are people I will have do that for us, as opposed to sort of spending time doing that. So getting hit on LinkedIn all the time is something that happens a lot. And so when I see I assign a 10, I probably do that subconsciously.
yes.
And there may be some incredible value which I could extract from some of those people. Just that I'm blind. I'm blind at all.
Yeah.
To say.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, all this is understandable, right? I mean, we're all in this environment. We've all sort of, once bitten, twice shy. We've learned that maybe people are not being genuine. And then we very quickly fall into behaviors that are designed to protect ourselves from being used and abused by someone. And then before you know it, we're tarring everyone with the same brush. But let's just take a look at that some more in a little bit more detail, understand what's going on with our brain, what's going on with the human brain for us to have this effect going on. Now, when we think about the human brain, we think about something that looks a bit like this, right? Yeah. Sorry? Apart from being green. Apart from it being green. Yeah. Maybe in the autopsy table, but would you be surprised to know that we actually have 3 brains? This is not strictly related to my talk on purpose, but I like sharing this with people because it's a really interesting thing. We actually, all of us have 3 brains. There's the head brain, which we all think about when we think of brains. Where else do you think about? The heart, yeah? The heart brain, yeah? And the gut brain. This is very good, right? Yeah, they found we have neurons, which people normally associate with the head brain. We have 70,000 neurons in the heart brain. That broken heart thing. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. That gut feel thing you get, that's a real thing too, right? We've got hundreds of thousands of neurons in our gut as well. And the interesting thing about the latest research on this stuff is that the communication pathways between our brains is from the gut up to the head. It's not the head brain telling the body what to do. It starts here and it's coming up to the head brain. I mean, it's terrific, right? I mean, it's amazing research. Over the past few years, we've learned some terrific stuff about how the human brain works. But once you start to think about it, you start to think about your gut brain. I know there are many, many times in my life when I've had this gut feeling that, you shouldn't really be doing that. I go, oh yeah. And then with the benefit of hindsight, I should have listened to that gut feeling that told me not to do that thing. I think it's an interest. Anyone who's interested in this neuroscience area, really worthwhile investing in it. But in terms of the human brain, what happens is when something comes into the human brain, it comes in via the brainstem here, and it's everything we do as human beings is filtered emotionally first. Everything, people say that people make decisions emotionally. It comes through the emotional part of the brain first, and then goes into the logical part of the brain. Yeah, so everything we do really is emotionally driven. We make emotional decisions, and then we try and justify it logically. So that's the kind of the flow. But interestingly, you can't get access to this part of the brain where logic and reasoning and all that stuff is happening until you sort of first pass the test here. Who knows what this little pea-sized part of the brain is? No. No, it's not the pituitary gland. This is the amygdala. Who knows what the amygdala does? Any thoughts? This is our primitive brain here. It's really got, there are three things it does. That's right. Fight, flight, or freeze. So you're going to fight what's going on, something's happening, or do you need to sort of get ready for a battle? Or do you need to put your sneakers on and leg it, get out of there? Or are you like a deer in the headlights, you just don't know what to do? Yeah? This is what the amygdala deals with. Yeah? It puts us into this fight, flight, or freeze mode. And what's interesting is, with the VUCA world we've talked about, the lack of trust we've talked about, the profound disengagement we've talked about, we're often in this thing called the survivor brain, which means we're just trying to make it to the end of the day without getting into too much shit. We're just trying to survive. We're trying to do the things that we're supposed to do our job so we can get paid, so we can go home to our families. Yeah? We're in this survivor brain mode. And what happens when we're in this survivor brain mode is the parts of the brain that deal with creativity, innovation, solutioning, collaboration, all of that part of the brain doesn't work. It closes that part of the brain down. That's what the amygdala is designed to protect you in moments of stress and pressure. Back in the day when we were cave people, this is really important, right? Because it was the difference between having some dinner or being someone else's dinner, right? So having this amygdala tell us, get the hell out of here, there's a T-Rex coming after you, was really, really important. But in the modern day, it's causing all sorts of issues, right? I mean, it's a natural human response. But what it's doing, it causes all sorts of hormones to be created in the body that are designed in this fight or flight mode to be there for a short period of time. Because we're meant to just get out of there quickly, and then we calm, and then we move on, right? But because we're in this fight or flight mode all the time, we're dealing with stress and pressure all the time, and we're not able to sort of get out of it. This constant survivor brain means that our bodies are flooded with these hormones all the time, and it causes all sorts of health issues for us. I mean, some really, really serious heart problems, some serious problems to do with cancers and other illnesses are created through this environment. I mean, people are known to have suffered life-threatening illnesses and have died because of this constant. The research is profound on it. So it's a real issue, but the modern workplace is causing these things to happen. It's forcing us to be in this constant stress environment, this survivor brain mode, and it's not sustainable. It has to change, which is why we need to sort of move to this world where we can unlock the power of purpose. And I think this is why this conversation, this word, this movement around purpose has become so important now, because more and more organizations, more and more leaders, more and more people are saying enough. We've got to change this. We cannot continue to operate like this. And in fact, now it's even becoming a powerful point of differentiation in business. Yeah? Because now pretty much stuff works, right? You know, we've all got competitors out there in the world. Products and services pretty much don't differentiate much anymore, right? Most stuff out there has a competitor. Yeah, we probably mostly got multiple competitors that do the stuff that we do. Branded, sure, different. I mean, think about my time at Deloitte. Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, KPMG, commonly known as the Big Four, very similar sized organizations, all big brands, all do the same stuff, all employ top people straight out of top universities. There's really, if you took the brands off the websites, even sound the same. You know, everyone's pretty much doing the same stuff. So what is it? If I'm looking for a service from one of those companies, how do I differentiate between one of them? It's very difficult, right? And in that world where we're all facing lots and lots of different competitors, clients are learning that actually the only way they can force some sort of differentiation is on price. Yeah? So if I don't know why I should deal with you, actually, Brendan's 20% cheaper than Alan. And I might go, well, we'll meet his price. And in fact, we'll do 25%. He might come back and say, oh yeah, 30. And then we're in this sort of Dutch auction. Before, you'd go there, wouldn't you, Brendan? Yeah? Yeah, no. People want the business, and we're in this Dutch auction. Which ultimately means we don't make money. We're busy doing business that we're not making money on. You know, so we really have to get to this purpose focus, because it makes a huge difference to the culture of the organization. It makes a huge difference to the customer experience when you turn up and you work for an organization that you want to turn up for, that you feel passionate about. You really enjoy being there. It makes a difference to the experience you provide to your customers, right? I know we've all had those experiences when we go and buy our coffee from someone, and they really take a lot of time, and they're really sort of into the craft of, the baristas that really sort of craft the way they're making that coffee. And it's really great to see that they're really taking time and are passionate about just making a coffee, and it makes me feel good about drinking the coffee, right? It can be simple things. But like anything, purpose, intent, all of this stuff, it's like a muscle. If you don't go to the gym and work out and work your muscles, those muscles go away, right? They atrophy. You lose those muscles. It's the same with purpose and intent. If we don't get to work on them every day, we don't get to do the things that give us purpose and meaning and allow us to have impact every day, we fall into this survivor brain, and we're exhausted. And our lifespan is, as a result, limited. There's another quote that I love from Richard Branson, and I think it's so true, especially in this world where products and services no longer really differentiate. It's the experience of the people that differentiates the business and that amplifies the brand. And that's really where the opportunity is for organizations, large and small, to be able to create that sense of purpose in their people, so that when they do interact with customers, those customers are elevated somehow, whether or not business actually happens. This is the power of purpose, right? And I think the impact of purpose, above and beyond the customer experience and the colleague experience, is also pervasive, because you take that home with you, right? You're not going home from your stressed job, kicking the dog and shouting at the kids, right? You're not doing that. You're going home feeling passionate about what you've done. You've had a big impact on the day, and you go home to a happy house and a happy family, and hopefully a happier community. I think that's the potential for this movement over time, is to actually create a happier, more purpose-driven world. We've got a long way to go, but that's certainly the potential. But what is purpose? Let's get into what it is. We've talked about where it's lacking and where the issues are, and the profound impact it's having on not only our health, but the quality of our work. Let's talk about what purpose is. Purpose is the reason we work beyond financial rewards and recognition. That makes sense? Anyone add anything to that? Agree with that? Disagree with that? The reason we work beyond financial rewards and recognition. Yeah? Just unpack that a little bit more. Our core intrinsic motivation for work, based on our values, capacity to contribute, view of the world, and of our place in it. This is a really important part. Defines who we seek to serve how we seek to serve, and why we're motivated to serve. I think it's a really great definition. You know, this definition comes to us from an organization that we work with called Imperative. Imperative is an organization based out of the US, started by a chap called Aaron Hurst, who's the author of this book called The Purpose Economy. Some of you may have heard of this book, maybe you haven't, but I'd highly recommend you get a copy of The Purpose Economy and read it. Aaron's thinking is that we're now approaching sort of the next huge economic shift, and that huge economic shift is driven by the purpose movement. We've gone through the industrial age, the information age, all these different processes, all these different ages and movements, and we're now moving into the purpose economy. And his book really explains what that's all about.
I was just going to say, I'm just trying to think of the name of the software company, Alchemist or Alf. They're a group in Sydney, you might have heard of them. They're one of the largest software groups now in the world.
Oh, Atlassian. Yes, Atlassian. Yes.
Atlassian, thank you.
Yeah.
Looked into that and have a couple of bits of business with them as well.
Yes.
They're just an incredible organisation.
Yes.
They really live and breathe this every day.
Absolutely.
I think it's values over culture equals, and it's every single thing they do is engineered around diversity in teams and the teams making the decisions. And instead of being frightened to make decisions and do things, they say, we're going to do it and then ask for forgiveness later. And that concept is really just turning a lot of wheels. So the organisation our organisation, we're now adopting the same sort of vigor.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
They're just amazing.
I'm proud to say that Atlassian are a client of Aaron's as well with Imperative, which I'll talk to you about some more shortly. But an incredible company, incredibly successful, an incredible culture. And purpose is really central to everything they do. But Aaron's journey to finding purpose and really working on purpose is a really interesting one. He founded a company called the Taproot Foundation back in, I think it was 2000. The Taproot Foundation was designed to make sure that not-for-profit organizations had access to the resources that normally they didn't have access to: marketing, strategy, leadership, legal advice, marketing advice, on a pro bono basis. He wanted to make sure that not-for-profit organizations could compete and grow at the same level as everybody else. But they typically didn't have access to those resources. So they set up the Taproot Foundation, and people would come out of the corporate world and commit time on a pro bono basis via the Taproot Foundation and help these companies, these not-for-profits, to thrive. And this became this huge, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of pro bono business done through the Taproot Foundation for not-for-profits. And people would say, hey, I get so much, I just love doing this work at the Taproot Foundation. I wish this could be my job. I just don't get the sense of achievement in my paycheck job that I do when I do work for the Taproot Foundation. This is fantastic, right? So for a while, Aaron and his team were like, whoa, fantastic, this is awesome. We've created Disneyland for work. Aren't we awesome? And then after a while, they started to think about, well, actually, this is a problem. This is a real problem because people don't actually go and live in Disneyland. People go to visit Disneyland and then they come back to their dreary existences and they get to escape to Disneyland for a while. And that's a problem. We don't want people to have to escape what they do for work every day. We want people to be able to experience what people are experiencing in the Taproot Foundation in their jobs every day. Is that possible? So then they started on this research with the world's leading universities to figure out, well, what's all this stuff on purpose? What's the latest research? How do we figure this out? How do we create Disneyland for people in the jobs that they do every day? And that was sort of the birth of this organization called Imperative, which I'll come back to in just a moment. But there are also some myths around purpose. We've talked about what purpose is, but there are also some things about what purpose isn't. People think purpose is a cause. It's not. Purpose isn't a cause. You don't have to give money to Greenpeace. You don't have to hug a tree. You don't have to be running around a forest late at night naked. Oh, is that just me? Sorry. Oh, it's not a. You don't have to have a cause. You don't have to have a cause to have purpose. In fact, one thing they learned at the Taproot Foundation with Aaron's work was that there are often people that would come from working at a cause to give pro bono work in the Taproot Foundation to get this sense of purpose that they didn't get from the cause that they were actually working in, which is a bit weird, right? So purpose isn't a cause, yeah? There are plenty of people that have lots and lots of causes but have no purpose. Myth number 2, purpose isn't a revelation. You know, you don't have to go on some sort of spiritual journey to climb Machu Picchu or go in search of Buddha or, I don't know, whatever kind of pilgrimage you might want to have to go on or get struck by lightning or, you know, there's no kind of revelation that's going to come to you to help you find purpose. It could happen, I suppose. But it's not a prerequisite. Purpose doesn't come from a revelation. Aaron shares this story when he talks a lot at universities. And he shares this. He says purpose isn't a revelation. And when he shares this, he feels the sort of mood in the room just go all really somber. And he asks people, well, yeah, what just happened? You know, it's like the energy in the room just sort of was drained out. And the people in the room were like, you know, they went to university because they were looking for purpose. And he just tells them, actually, you know, it's not here. They were looking for it as though it was going to come some revelation from going through this study to be a lawyer or to be a doctor or something like that. But that's not necessarily the case. Not a revelation. And purpose, and myth number 3 is purpose isn't a luxury. You know, one thing that gets thrown around a lot is this idea of paying it forward. You know, it's like to pay it forward, you have to have had it first, right? Kind of like there's a film. I think it was called Pay It Forward, where the guy gives someone a car. He's a millionaire and stuff like that. But the idea is that you've made it, and when you've made it, you've worked all your life. Now you can kind of give back, yeah. But that's not the case. Purpose isn't something that's reserved for people that have already made it. It's not a luxury that's reserved for the few who are already at the top of the tree. It isn't. Yeah? Are there any other myths that we haven't dealt with that you might have heard of? No? I think the 3 main ones. The interesting thing is that purpose isn't any of those. What purpose is, and this is what makes it so magical from the research, is that purpose is a choice. We can all choose to have purpose in our lives. Yeah? We can all choose to have it. How? Let's talk about it for a moment. Firstly, where does purpose come from? Purpose comes from these 3 simple things. Purpose firstly comes from relationships. You're not going to find purpose by meditating in a dark cupboard by yourself. You find purpose from connections with other people. Purpose is first and foremost about human connection. Yeah? This is a big issue. We talked about work. We talked about the workplace. What do we talk about the workplace? We talked about low trust, profound disengagement, this VUCA environment. I mean, this is a real problem, right? Purpose comes from people being able to connect with each other in a professional and a personal capacity. And we're a very long way from being able to do that in most workplaces. Yeah? This is critical. This is actually probably the foundation of purpose, us being able to connect with other people. Secondly, it comes from impact, from having an impact. Yeah? I mean, not even in huge ways, right? We're not talking about necessarily going out there and saving the whales. We're talking about doing something really simple that will have some value for somebody else. it'll take the focus away from you and onto somebody else. It could be something really, really simple that is valuable to somebody else, and they will get some sort of benefit out of it. And you've had an impact on their life. You get a sense of purpose from that, and so do they. You know, they've done some research on this. They've tested this stuff, and they found that the good hormones, the serotonins and all those good hormones that make us feel good, that gives you that natural high, when you do something for somebody else, they get those rush of natural good hormones, and so does the person doing the good thing. Both parties get this rush of good hormones. You know, those bad hormones, the stress ones, you know, the cortisol that does all the bad stuff to the brain, they reduce. And it also comes from growth. From challenging ourselves, from taking risks, from doing things that we're maybe not used to doing, but we're stepping out of our comfort zone for a moment, or we're at least expanding that little comfort zone, so we're doing something new. We're growing and taking risks. That also gives us purpose. Surprising? Not really, right? I mean, the funny thing about this stuff is there's no rocket science to it. You know, this is stuff that every one of us can do right now, every single day. And with that in mind, so the best way to think about it is this overlap. This is what it is. It's this overlap of what gives you meaning and the impact you want to have. That overlap is where purpose comes from. It's not necessarily going to be a complete overlap, right? You're not necessarily going to get these two circles kind of being completely aligned. You're not going to live in this sort of utopian, purpose-driven world where you get to do the things that give you purpose every minute of every day. But what you do want is to have there be moments through the day where you get to do the things that give you purpose and meaning in your life. Yeah? So at the end of the day, if anyone into journaling, at the end of the day, really think about journaling. At the end of the day, you write in your journal, today I did this. I got a lot of purpose from doing this today. Actually, that activity of journaling is one of the other things that gives you purpose. Actually, recalling those things that gave you purpose gives you a second hit of those good hormones, which is great, right? Just writing it down and remembering it relives that good feeling that you got. So I've got an activity for you. Some things we can do to activate purpose. Do you gain fulfillment from your relationships at work? You know, we need to think about someone at work, someone you know, someone you work with. It could even be a client, depending on the size of business you have. Just think of someone that you spend time with, and then when you do spend time with them, it always leaves you feeling great. You know, and if they were to leave your organization, or if you weren't to see them again, you'd feel really kind of sad about it. Yeah? It'd leave you feeling a bit low. Okay? Think about that person. I want to visualize that person. And what I want you to do, I mean, time-wise, you probably can't do it right now. But what I'd like to do is to think about that person as soon as you possibly can, is to send that person an email and let them know how much them being around matters to you and why it matters. Yeah? It's a very simple thing. Just send them a little email to say, hey, just wanted to let you know, so appreciate this, or being able to do this with you, or this, whatever it is, whatever comes to your mind, just send them a quick email and let them know that they matter to you. Is that something that you can do? Yep. Yeah? Do you think that they would appreciate that? Would that have an impact on them? Yeah? Would that make you feel good by doing that? Yeah? Such a simple thing, but often it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen as often as it should. It's such a simple thing. Yeah? Here's another one. Another one for you to think about. Do you feel that you're making an impact that matters at work? Think about what you're doing. Think about what you're doing. Are you making the impact you want to make at work? I don't want you to answer this one out loud, just to yourself. Just think about this to yourself and give yourself a score from 1 to 10. Just think about that. Just be honest with you. No one else is going to know. This is just a question for you. As it says there, if you're scoring 6 or lower on this question, you really need to think about that. Because having an impact, as we talked about, having an impact at work really matters in terms of you being able to embrace purpose and connect with purpose. Yeah? So really think about that. If you can't, if you're not, what can you change so that you're able to do more of the things that allow you to have an impact? And does your work enable you to grow? Does your work enable you to grow? How often do you feel you grow as a person at work? You know, I mean, this is a real terrible area. I mean, most organizations of a large scale, who's here who's worked for large organizations does so now, right? Performance reviews. Don't we love performance reviews, right? I mean, there's that one time or maybe 2 times a year when you get to talk about your growth. Wow, that's fantastic, isn't it? Eh? Such an effective process. Like, imagine that in professional sports, you know, in a sports team. Imagine, the coach sitting down with his players, talk about their performance once every 6 months. It's not going to happen, is it? You know, we need to grow all the time. And when you think about your team as well, think about your team. How would your team answer these questions? Would they score themselves high? Would they score themselves low? The first one I gave to you, when you go back to your offices and talk to your people about the stuff, you know, that's a little thing that you can get them to do. Ask them to think about someone that they really care about, that they really get a lot of value from working with. Ask them to send that person an email. You know, you start a little sort of viral thing going. People start to do that, and they really sort of learn a neat little trick that they really got some value out of, and then you'll see more and more people will just start doing that. And if you as a leader can just continue to do that, this is so important about this whole purpose thing, is you have to model it. You have to be the person that's embracing and working on purpose yourself so people can see it. Then people learn that the leader's doing it. It's okay for me then. Make sense? Let's have a look. Okay. So, one thing, we talked about what purpose is, but one of the interesting things about the research is that we all have different ways of viewing work. This comes back to your point before about why we go to work. Different people have different reasons for work. Yeah, there are about a third on this continuum. Some people do the work that they do because it's a job. They have bills to pay, they need to earn money, it's a means to an end. I need a salary, may as well do this. Yeah? That's all it is. Other people do it because it's about status. It's about career. It's about the title. It's about ego. I want my parents to know that I made the bar, that I'm now a practicing doctor, that I did this, that I did that. It's all about that sort of stuff. That's what motivates them. And then there's about a third of people who for them, work is a calling. It's really something much bigger than getting a paycheck or a career. For them, work is really about having an impact. Yeah? For them, engagement isn't something that they need to worry about. You probably know these people, right? You see these people through your workplaces. You can probably think about those people. They stand out because they're so exceptional, because they're so rare. They're like diamonds in the rough, right? They take so much pride in what it is they do. Yeah? There's about a third. And it doesn't really matter what the job is. There's a general split. It could be some doctors do what they do because it's just a job. Some people do it because mommy or daddy was a doctor. My uncle, my granddad was a doctor. It's a family thing. We all went to Harvard. We all became doctors. We all became lawyers or whatever it is. And some do it because it's a calling. It's not specific to the job. Purpose is something that can apply to any job. Yeah, the key is to get more of these people in your organizations, yeah, in your circle of influence, your circle of relationships, the more people that we can get out there working on purpose and seeing what they do as a way to impact the world and a way to impact other people, the better. Yeah, make sense? Okay. How are we doing for time, Brendan? I'm way over, I think. We're getting very close, okay? I think Brendan spoke too much at the beginning, so he ate some of my time up, right? So, hey, Brendan. So let's just have a look. This is something that you guys can sort of learn for yourselves, and I'll explain in just a moment. But the imperative platform that I talked about before, that Aaron Hurst, the author of the Purpose Economy book, developed, they found that there are actually 24 different themes of purpose. We all are motivated and driven by different things. There are 24 different combinations of purpose. And we all have primary drivers and secondary drivers, but generally it falls into this sort of framework here. And it's based on sort of how we see the world. The first part is who we impact, yeah? Some of us see that where, our driver is to impact people at an individual level, yeah? We very much want to talk to people at an individual level, and that's how we serve. Others are much more they think organizationally, yeah? They think about, they impact people by making sure that organizations work properly, yeah? They think about it at that level. And other people think about at a society level. They're much more about policy that makes society great for everybody, yeah? Then we're driven by this second thing here is why. There are really two drivers about why. One is karma. Really, karma is about market forces. We generally believe that if we leave everything, there'll be winners and there'll be losers, yeah? If you do good things will come back to you, yeah? Market forces will pick its winners and pick its losers, and if we leave the market to do what it does, it'll generally sort itself out, yeah? And some of us see the world that way. Others see the world as through the lens of harmony. Harmony is more about saying, hey, if we leave market forces to do what it does, a lot of people can get left behind, and that's not fair. Harmony is more about leveling the playing field so that everybody has the opportunity to succeed, yeah? But you can see these two are very different, right? Some people see the lens through harmony. Some people see the lens through karma. It's not right or wrong. It's just that we're innately tuned to see the world this way, yeah? And then there's how we solve problems. There are these four. Some of us solve problems by working with people at a community level, yeah? Some people solve problems through the lens of human. We want to get into the human sort of biology. Alan's one here. Alan talks about personality profiling and micro expressions. He's really into the psychology and the innate qualities that make us human, yeah? That's what this one's about. And there's structure. People want to solve problems by making sure the structures in organizations and society are developed so that people can flourish. People think about it that way. And also people want to share knowledge. People are really into the research, are really into the science, are really want to figure stuff out. Why is that working that way? Can we explain it? And can we help people to understand it so we can do things better? Yeah. We all have unique combinations of these. And the idea is, once you understand how you uniquely see the world, yeah, what gives you purpose and meaning every day, you can then take that information and you can tailor your job, whatever job you do, to do more of that stuff every day, yeah? Because the job that you do isn't necessarily tailored to you, right? This is a problem. Most of us have taken a job and we've been given the job description, and we take that as the finished article. It's like going into a store and buying some clothes, They can generally fit you okay, but if you had a tailor-made suit or garment made for you, it fit you perfectly, right? That's the attitude we need to take with our jobs. We need to tailor the job so that it allows us to do the things that give us meaning and purpose. Yeah? We still have to produce the results. But when we learn more about what gives us purpose and meaning every day, we can make sure that we're doing the things that we do to deliver the results we need to do in a way that is actually consistent with how we see the world. That make sense? And anybody can make that choice. Anybody can make that choice. I mean, it's fantastic if organizationally, the organization made that choice and said, hey, go for your lives, everybody. We want to embrace this. But even if your organization hasn't done that organizationally, you can do it yourself. You can do it yourself. Yeah? And, I mean, the caveat to this is, if you're in an organization where they're very strict and very structured and say, hey, don't give a crap that you look at the world this way. You're going to do it the way I tell you. It might be that you have to make a different choice. Yeah? It might be. It might be. Yeah? But then, the great stuff is, it doesn't matter what size of organization you have. It could be a small organization, could be a large organization with thousands of people. Whatever measures you look at, whatever metrics you look at, having people working on purpose means happier people. It means more sales. It means more collaborative teams. It means higher results at the company level, at the individual level, at the team level, whatever research you want to look at. And there's a heap of research out there. If you go to a website, you'll see there's a lot of research on our page from LinkedIn, from Ernst & Young, from Pricewaterhouse that talks about the impact of purpose. It's all positive, whatever metric you want to measure. Look at this one. 37% increase in sales from working on purpose. I mean, it's huge, right? It's huge. So I'd really encourage you to do this stuff, to really think about how you can work on purpose, how you can embrace purpose. And I wanted to make sure that we didn't leave you, that we left you today with something real that you could do to sort of really learn more about your purpose journey and really start to make some concrete changes. So what I've done is spoken to the guys at Imperative, and we've organized for you guys to get access to the Imperative platform so you can complete the purpose assessment for yourself. Yeah? It only takes about 10 minutes to do. And you'll get a report at the end of it that says, hey, this is how you get purpose and meaning in your life. And here are some tips. Here's some guides. It's about a 24-page report that comes back full of detail that will help you to embrace your purpose. There's also some online tools that are designed for you to take that report, which gives you some words to explain your purpose. But the important thing is that you take those words and then you turn them into your own words. Yeah, there's a tool on the website that's called the Purpose Statement Builder. You need to be able to have some language that's your own that describes your purpose. Yeah? And you can use that tool over and over again so that you work through a process of really starting to communicate what gives you purpose in your life and in your work. And as you get closer and closer to what gives you purpose and start living on purpose every day, you'll find things will change. Things will get better. The people around you will notice those changes and you'll be having a much more purpose-driven life. So the website to go to is eccoh.co. The actual assessment is normally $65, but if you use that code, I think it works out about $55. You save about $10 on the purpose assessment tool. Yeah. So use that thing. At the checkout, there's a at the checkout page, there's a thing where you put the promotional code in. You put BMB on purpose, and it's there for you, right? I mean, if you want to, you can make this available to your teams, however you want to do it. This is going to be live for the next 7 days. So feel free to go to the site, log on, do your assessment, and I would love to hear from you once you've done it. Once you've completed the assessment, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know what your purpose drivers are. I mean, I actually get a notification back at the back end of the system anyway, so I'll see it come through. So Big Brother's watching. But I'd love to know what you think. Was it accurate? Yeah? Did it talk to you? Was there anything you found out? Any surprises? Anything you found out about yourself that you weren't really sure of before? Did it explain something? You've always had this sort of little itch in the back of your head, and now you've read this report, it makes sense. You know? These are all the things that I'd love to know about. But that's really the end of the talk. I haven't really left much time for questions, but if you guys have to run off, I understand. But if you've got any questions, now's the time. Stunned silence, eh? Stunned.
What is your purpose?
So my purpose is to break down. You'll see on my LinkedIn page, actually use it on my LinkedIn page. My imperative is to break down the barriers between buyers and sellers, so that together we can change the world. And actually, just going back to this structure here. My purpose drivers are individual. So, which makes sense because we do a lot of one-on-one coaching. My specialist area is sales performance. We're a sales transformation consultancy, so we work with organizations. We do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people. So, no surprise that my dominant driver is individual and harmony. So, I come from an individual and I see the world through the lens of harmony. Yeah, that's why we work. I see it's all very much about trying to create a level playing field for people. Trying to help people to make their way through the world despite everything that's going on. And we do that, we solve that problem by creating communities, by helping to bring people together, by helping to connect people who might benefit from meeting each other. So we do a lot of that. So individual, harmony and community are my primary purpose drivers. And now I understand that. It makes absolute sense to me. I can do more of that. And the more I do of that, the more I get the sense of working on purpose every day. It's just about raising awareness, right? Once you are aware of what gives you purpose, you can do more of the stuff that gives you purpose. And the other great thing is it makes you really, really aware of the things that don't give you purpose. So instead of saying yes to stuff, which a lot of us tend to do, we say, yeah, I'll do that. Without really being aware of the fact that actually that's going to move us further away from what gives us purpose. It's taking us into an area really where we're not going to enjoy. Once you've got awareness of what gives you purpose, you can make different choices. When something comes along, you're like, really, am I going to be really good at that? Is that really going to help me to do the things that give me purpose every day? Probably isn't. Thanks for the opportunity, but I'm going to decline. No's okay. Yeah? Any other questions? Yeah? Fantastic. Yeah? Well, it's been a lot of fun having a chat with you. I think Brendan's got something he just wants to show you.